Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today. I am Representative Patrick Sellers, and I represent the people of House District 57. Now that a well-deserved spring break is over and we resume our work for the second half of this legislative session, it is critical that we continue our ongoing focus on improving education in Alabama. Education should always be a top priority because it is foundational to our long-term success, not just in terms of economics, but also in terms of improving our overall quality of life. We know that a quality education unlocks unlimited potential and puts the blessing of the American dream within our grasp. That's why my colleagues in the House are looking at new and improved ways to fund education in Alabama, to ensure that all schools, regardless of neighborhood or zip code, have equitable access to the resources that they need for our children to be successful in school and beyond. We are continuing to see some of our legislative efforts and investments pay off. For example, our best-in-class pre-K program continues to be a model for the nation, and our post-pandemic high school math scores have shown tremendous improvement throughout the state. But the one thing that we know is absolutely critical for our children to succeed is for their parents to have the opportunity to be actively involved in their children's academics and extracurricular activities. Countless studies show that parental involvement and support is absolutely critical and indispensable when it comes to academic achievement and success in life. Yet many parents are not able to be involved or to show support for their children simply because they can't afford to take time off work. That's because if it means taking time off work, they might run the risk of losing their job. That might mean missing a once-in-a-lifetime spelling bee, or a championship football game, a school musical performance, or even an important parent-teacher conference, all of which are extremely important to students who need and deserve the involvement and support of their parents. That's why I've introduced House Bill 326, the Parental Right to Participate in Schools Act, which would permit employees who are parents or guardians of school-aged children to take up to 48 hours of leave annually from their job to attend school-related activities. The bill is also fair to employers because it gives them the ability to deny requests if it would create a substantial disruption to business operations or make production or service unusually difficult. This bill is a win for everyone involved, the parent, the employer, and most importantly, the child who needs to know that mom and dad are there for them when they need their presence and support the most. So as we look to improve educational outcomes in Alabama, it's critical that we take a comprehensive approach that addresses major issues such as fair and equitable funding, but it is also important to tackle other issues like giving parents an opportunity to support their children without fear that it may impact their employment. As Lady Bird Johnson once said, encourage and support your kids because children are apt to live up to what you believe of them. Thank you, and I would now introduce my colleague from Tuskegee representing House District 82, Representative Pebblin Warren.
Thank you, Representative Sellers. I'll begin by saying that I strongly agree that parental involvement and support is essential for every child's educational success. I would also add that we face many unprecedented educational challenges today that are due to new and emerging technologies. The internet, social media, artificial intelligence, and the widespread use of cell phones by increasingly younger children all pose serious risks and obstacles for students, teachers, and school administrators. Today, adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media face double the risk of anxiety and depression symptoms, and the average daily use as of the summer of 2023 was 4.8 hours. More than 50% of students get over 237 notifications per day. Students spend an average of 90 minutes on their phones during the school day. It takes 23 minutes and 15 seconds to refocus after a distraction. Teachers express overwhelming concerns. 83% support an all-day phone-free policy. To put this in perspective, U.S. teens spend about 5 hours a day on social media, with girls spending slightly more than boys, the average to over 34 hours a week. Excessive social media use can negatively impact sleep, attention, academic performance, physical fitness, and can lead to social isolation. More than half of teens say it will be difficult for them to give up social media. About a third of the teens, 36%, say they spend too much time on social media, and just 8% say they spend too little time. I'm not sure about 8% that thinks 34 hours a week is too little time on social media. Unfortunately, this widespread addiction to social media, which is accessed mostly through cell phones, has become a major problem in classrooms throughout Alabama. Although many schools have policies regarding students' cell phones and social media usage, current state law does not give the State Department of Education the ability to create, enforce, and amend school policies relating to cell phone usage. That's why I introduced House Bill 81, which will require the State Board of Education to adopt a model policy restricting the possession and use of cell phones in public K-12 classrooms, with some exceptions. This bill will also require the model policy to include a discipline scale that levies a fine against students who actually use the cell phone in violation of the model policy. As you may be aware, this is not the only bill that's been introduced this session to address this important issue. In fact, Representative Sellers has introduced similar legislation, and I look forward to having the opportunity to work together with him and my colleagues to craft practical and meaningful legislation we can all support. We continue to hear from educators that strongly support these efforts, including our state superintendent, Dr. Eric Mackey, who has said he and the other board members think the board should have this authority. Adopting statewide restrictions on cell phones in the classroom will reduce issues like cyberbullying, internet addiction, and mental health problems associated with excessive social use. In addition, it will help close the academic achievement gap because our children will finally be able to focus again in the classroom, and our teachers will spend far less time having to act as the cell phone police in order to manage their classroom learning environment. Thank you so much, and I would like to introduce our caucus chair, Representative Barbara Drummond of Mobile, who represents House District 103.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank Representative Warren, and we'll wait for APT.
Let me start talking about your Mobile Fresh Register. I'll sit right here.
Again, I want to thank Representative Warren. I am somewhat awestruck by the fact that our children average about 34 hours a week on social media. That's a pretty daunting number for me. I'd also like to add that I agree with both of my colleagues regarding the tremendous importance. Hold on just a second. The tremendous importance of parental involvement and ensuring that our classrooms are positive learning environments that are free from the distraction of social media and nonstop texting. I applaud both of them for their efforts in addressing these critical issues that impact the future success of our young minds in the classroom, for they are our future. As we discuss the issues facing public education in Alabama, we must look at how deep cuts in the federal budget and President Trump's executive orders to eliminate the U.S. Department of Education, how it will negatively impact our children as well as our state. As legislators, we simply cannot pretend that these massive cuts by the federal government will not sharply decrease the staffing in Alabama and will have a negative, profound effect upon Alabama. In fact, for every dollar Alabama pays in federal taxes, it gets back $2 in federal funding. We're very dependent on those federal dollars. In the fiscal year of 2022, Alabama received about $20.2 billion in federal funding. This includes money transferred to the state as well as money sent directly to our local school systems. Federal funding helps us pay for things like infrastructure, education, health, and all of it is for a low-income individual. And if you know Alabama, you know that Alabama is a low-income state. In the 2021-22 school year, Alabama public schools received about $2 billion in federal funding. That's 18% of the total educational funding, and it translates to about $3,000 per student. This is not only a significant portion of the budget, it's money spent primarily on specialized services to assist students with a wide variety of disabilities and challenges. For example, think of the kids with autism who require IEP, and they may need special assistance technology in the classroom. These are the type of specialized services that are likely paid for by the U.S. Department of Education through grants and other programs. So as we anticipate large cuts in the federal budget, it is imperative that we understand the impact of those cuts on the students across Alabama. That's why we introduced HB 438, which would establish the Education Transparency Board, which would complete an impact study in the event that the federal Department of Education budget is cut by 20% or more. That would allow us to put practical plans in place so that we can together ensure that our most vulnerable students continue to receive the specialized services they need. Any reduction in federal funding would have a negative impact on more than 131,000 students in Alabama with disabilities, those who receive all kinds of educational services. That's why we need to take action, not to yesterday, we need to do it today so that we can plan effectively for tomorrow. We know that these cuts are likely coming soon, which is why we need to understand the impact and look for alternative solutions. I said the other day, when we have a hurricane in South Alabama, we all get ready to prepare. We go buy all of our batteries. Well, this is a hurricane coming to the state of Alabama. It is time that we need to know what these reductions, how they will affect our students, how they will affect our local school boards, as well as our communities. We need to take a hard look at our educational funding models and determine a fair and sensible plan to ensure we continue providing the services that our disadvantaged students and their families have come to rely on and to expect and deserve. We know big changes are coming. There's no excuse for us not to do our homework and be prepared. We've got to be prepared. Perhaps we can take Benjamin Franklin's word to heart when he famously said, "Failure to prepare is preparing to fail."
Yes.
So please, we encourage all of you to call your legislators today and ask them to support HB 438. This is not a piece of legislation that is partisan. This is a piece of legislation that says hurricanes coming in education, and we all need to step back and prepare ourselves for what is about to happen to Alabama, and to make a plan to offset federal education cuts that will affect every student who needs the help the most. For the sake of our children, we cannot afford to say we didn't see this coming. The hurricane is coming. Thank you at this time, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, and thank you to the House Democratic delegation, because we see the hurricane, and we're simply saying to our colleagues, let's prepare. Let's get all of the tools that we need to know so we can minimize any damages to those who need the services the most in the state of Alabama as it relates to education. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for holding me.
I had a quick question. And this is in regards to not just the money, but our local counties and municipalities, are they prepared to take on specialized tasks like administering an IEP or dealing with students that have disabilities? Because I know the funding comes from the federal government, but what about the expertise? Will that be part of that bill?
I can tell you, I'm in Mobile, and I represent the largest school system with over 55,000 children. They are not prepared. Right now, they're still coming up with a plan for the loss of the federal dollars that came in under the previous administration, because those dollars are already drying up. And there is a vacuum when it comes to trying to recruit future educators. That's not just a problem for Mobile, that's a problem for all of us in our systems. Anyone else want to answer that question? Okay. Any other questions? We must be good.
I have one other question actually about the cell phone bill. And that is, some people that do have disabilities use cell phone technology or other types of portable devices. Do these bills take that into account?
Yes, there are exceptions for all students with IEP that specialize in any type of technical devices to use. It's the laptop, the computer, all these exceptions are given in the bill.
And it also includes those with health care needs too. So people like innocent students who have a diabetic problem would have to have innocent phone. All that is part of that.
Well, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. So I'm a local school board member in Birmingham, so I'm excited to see the delegation that's standing here. And everything that you all have presented and that you're placing for the people is exactly what we need. When we talk about federal funding, Representative Drummond, we have that 14% of Birmingham City Schools budget comes from federal funding. So you're talking about Title I, IEP, Title III funding. We're talking about all of these supportive services programs that our students need. And it's going to be devastating. I do think that districts are prepared, sir, to be able to continue to provide the services. But what's really important is for us as elected officials to understand how those resources need to be properly delegated. The supports of parents being involved, it's unfortunate that we have to look at mandating this from the state level, but it's exciting that we are on the same page about parental involvement and engagement. And then also looking at the cell phone policies and from the state, this is critical. We have 2 schools in our district where actually our principals took Title I funding to sort of use as a project to determine if this is going to have a decrease in some of the negative behaviors that we've had in our school system. And what we've heard at the board from those 2 practices, crickets, which means it's effective, and this needs to happen across the state. So all I have is thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, and let us know what we need to do to come and support so that others can get on board.
Call your legislators.
They're here.
She's here. Well, let me put it. Call your legislators on the other side of the aisle.
Got you. I understand. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Are there any other questions? Well, we thank you all for coming. And we all are keeping up the good fight, and we're going to get in good trouble.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Good trouble. That's good. That's good.